The American war front is shifting. After spending 8 days traveling abroad in Europe, President Barack Obama culminated his tour with a surprise visit to Iraq on April 7th. While there, he reiterated the campaign promises he made over 2 years ago to end the war in Iraq promptly and in as orderly a fashion as possible. The unannounced visit was Obama's last stop before heading back to the United States. During his tour of Baghdad, the president called on Iraqis to ready themselves to shoulder the burden of their own country after a significant proportion of U.S. troops had been extricated. This pronouncement was cheered by the U.S. forces in attendance. He said to them that they had given Iraq the opportunity to stand on its own as a democratic country, and that it was time for us to transition to the Iraqis, because they need to take responsibility for their own lands. However, before his rousing speech in Iraq, the president addressed a Turkish audience in Istanbul, telling them that he was committed to getting out of Iraq, but that the United States would have to be very careful in doing so. The president accepted his personal responsibility to make sure that the withdrawal did not result in a collapse back into violence and civil strife. It is for this reason that his defense staff has put together a plan which will leave perhaps tens of thousands of American troops in Iraq even after the official withdrawal has been completed. By some White House estimates, the figure for servicemen and women left behind to maintain stability could number 50,000. The war in Iraq has been a disaster for the United States on many fronts. The war has cost 4,000 American men and women their lives, and as of last March, it was estimated to cost the government roughly $12 billion per month to prosecute. The government has already apportioned $526 billion for the war, and its net financial cost is expected to be in the realm of at least $3 trillion. The war did have the effect of removing a brutal dictator from power, but it exchanged law and order for abject violence. The jury is still out as to whether the cruelty of the Hussein regime was worth the anarchy of post-invasion Iraq. Perhaps the worst effect of the entire war is that it has completely tarnished America's reputation around the globe. President Obama did much to quell animosity by the simple act of winning the 2008 election, but he has to put together tangible results if he ever hopes of rolling back the quagmire that was, and still is, the Iraq War. One thing that must be remembered when discussing Iraq is that the president is still vehemently in favor of continuing and escalating our military involvement in Afghanistan. It is very likely that many of the troops withdrawn from Iraq will simply be redeployed several hundred miles to the east, in the mountains of Afghanistan. President Obama asked NATO to pledge more support for the Afghan front, but their commitment of 5,000 troops, who will be used strictly for training purposes, and $100 million fell well short of his ideas. The war in Afghanistan has proven to be just as much a bottomless money pit as Iraq. When combined, the two wars will likely cost the government at least $5 to $7 trillion when the interest payments on loans and health care costs for veterans are tallied. President Obama has promised a surge of at least 21,000 troops into Afghanistan, while drastically reducing the presence in Iraq. According to the Washington Post, the U.S. is currently spending $2 billion a month in Afghanistan. The Obama plan would increase that figure by at least 60% this year. Some view Obama's decision as a major mistake, setting the stage for another multi-trillion-dollar failure, as was the case in Iraq. The United States cannot simply pull out of these regions. It would be unfair to the people who live there. But if one thing can be learned from the Bush administration, it is that American-style nation-building is not working. Many believe that if we were to direct the additional military budget for Afghanistan into building education, infrastructure, and basic necessities, it will be much more effective and beneficial down the road. Instead, we have chosen to root out Al-Qaeda and the Taliban in a drawn-out conflict, instead of simply making the two groups useless and irrelevant by giving the people of that country a better option. On behalf of concerned citizens, I'm Craig Harrington. For more on this and other related topics, please log on to economyincrisis.org.
Wake up, America! Open up your eyes! Wake up, America! Wake up!
Produced by economyincrisis.org.